Oh, there's a lot going on here as we lead up to airtime. I think the most exciting thing about how big our show has gotten is not the numbers themselves. That's wonderful. It gets everyone around here paid and fed and whatnot. That's great. The most exciting thing about our show blowing up as big as it has over the past few years is it means a whole lot of people are listening and watching, and a whole lot of people involved in college football are listening and watching. So if we touch on something like officiating, a bunch of college football officials, as it turns out, Jesse and Colin, listen to and watch the show. And they're more than happy to reach out as long as we maintain their anonymity. We got a really good and really jam-packed show for you tonight, high atop a lovely downtown Nashville, Tennessee, Tuesday, September 17th, the year of our Lord 2024. We are proudly powered by Academy Sports and Outdoors, and I am nervously bringing you Week 3 predictions. We're doing Tennessee, Oklahoma tonight, USC-Michigan tonight. You realize we have a ranked versus ranked matchup in Lincoln, Nebraska this Friday night, right? You realize there's a solid 75 or 80% chance the winner of Utah-Oklahoma State is in the Big 12 championship game, right? Well, if you didn't realize that, you will by the end of tonight. You will have a brand new JP poll by the end of tonight. And like I said, we talked about officiating and how disastrously bad it's been, especially last weekend on Sunday. We talked about it on Sunday, and since then, I have talked with no less than a dozen or more current college football officials, and they were very happy to give their feedback. And a lot of it is stuff that you will not hear anywhere else. They're watching us and listening to us in Valley, Alabama, Portland, Oregon, Monterey, California, Kingsport, Tennessee. Thank you so much. We have a lot of different areas to get to tonight. Kind of show we love to do around here. Okay, so I don't want to start it off positive. Why would we ever start a show on Tuesday night off positive? No. Surprises are great. Pleasant surprises are even better, immunity. But tonight, I wanted to talk to you at the start of the show about the biggest disappointments in college football for me so far this year. And Florida State's got to lead that list. And this is not going to be a whack-a-mole segment for Florida State because I got like 4 or 5 other programs that I want to hit. But the wrong portal quarterback in DJ, I think it's very apparent at this point. They're getting run on. You know, their strength should have been the line of scrimmage. That's all we listened to during spring and fall camp. And again, I've gone over this. I'm going to say it one more time. I don't think the folks who cover Florida State were lying about the talent on that roster. I don't think Nick Saban, when he went and watched them practice and picked them to win the ACC, was lying or was deceived about the talent on that roster. I don't think the NFL scouts that were cited publicly and that I spoke to personally who went through Tallahassee during fall camp were lying to me about the talent on the roster. It's just not a good football team. And so they're getting run on. They can't run it. It's just a total fraud alert of a team. And it's very disappointing. They were 18th in points per game last year. They are 124th. In fact, it's Tuesday. It's weird to do this. Padlock stat. FSU last year, 18th points per game, 124th this year. And honestly, when producer Jesse gave me that number, I was surprised they were as high as 124. Like, there are teams out there worse at scoring the football right now than Florida State. You want to pray for someone, pray for those teams tonight. Notre Dame is a big disappointment to me so far this year. And they're banged up now. I see they're losing guys by the day on the offensive line. But the Northern Illinois loss is still fresh in my mind. Now, they cleansed the palate this past weekend. Ramen Noodle Express may not have gotten much right, but, buddy, Notre Dame minus 7.5. Notre Dame covered that thing in about 5 seconds and never looked back. But how can we forget? How can we forget the Northern Illinois loss? And how can I forget them losing to Marshall and Stanford 2 years ago? And how all this sort of gets lumped into losing to unranked opponents, losing as a double-digit favorite at home, because it's happened a few times now. It's happened. And there are still no elite pieces. And when I say elite pieces, you know what I mean. I mean a unit over on the offensive side of the ball. And I am disappointed because I wanted more. I am frequently labeled a Notre Dame hater, despite the fact that I'm sitting here with balled-up fists wanting them to be elite, because I am a person who respects the overall tradition and pageantry of this sport. So growing up in the rural South, not a lot of folks think like me when it comes to Notre Dame. True story. My favorite experience out of all the places we've been is being able to go and stand on the sideline at Notre Dame Stadium. Someone asked me that on a show the other day. They thought I was going to say LSU or Alabama or Tennessee, and all those places are awesome. But, you know, I'm a kid who grew up, and my impression of Notre Dame was old VHS tapes and the movie Rudy. I know a lot of you have mixed feelings on that movie, but the point is, it's kind of like it is being in a movie scene when you go up there. So I romanticize Notre Dame in my head. And when they lose to Northern Illinois, it sucks. I don't like it. Florida, of course, this is in no particular order. Florida has been a crushing disappointment so far this year. I have, as well as all of you, have had to jump a car off at some point in your life. And sometimes you hook up those red and black jumper cables and you turn it over and it cranks right up and close the hood and you're good to go. You've also been in situations where you hook up the jumper cables to where you think you got a good solid latch and then you go turn it and nothing happens. So what do? Well, you go adjust it and you go turn it this way, 30 degrees, 40 degrees over there that way, and then you turn it over again and it still doesn't work. Then you just keep on rearranging things, and then finally, hopefully, you turn it over and it works. It's not turning over. It's not cranking. I listened to Billy Napier talk about this stuff. I sat there 5 feet from him in Gainesville, and we did the show from there in the spring. He maintained eye contact the entire time because he believed what he was saying. He believed in the moves they had made. He believed in the team. He believed in the coaches and the entire organizational structure that he'd brought into that building. But it hasn't worked. I was listening to his press conference for this week, and he was talking about how as soon as those guys got in the weight room this Monday morning, we're full speed ahead to Mississippi State, and no one's quitting. I was listening to, I believe it was Pete Thamel earlier today, talking about the future of this program, and one of the first things he said is maybe they're not in a hurry to get rid of him because he's still got the locker room. It's like rearranging the jumper cables every week. You just hope eventually, whatever you've done, the combination of decisions and moves and changes you've made any given week, you turn the ignition and it starts. They're on the road at Mississippi State this week. They're favored by 6.5 points, I believe, at FanDuel at the moment. And I and the model both like them to win and cover. I have no confidence in saying this whatsoever because I've had no confidence watching them do anything so far this year. Penn State, still undefeated, but that doesn't mean I can't be a little disappointed in you so far this year. Penn State, offensively, surprisingly, is not what I want to talk to you about. They're working on it. Andy Kotelnicki's there. It should take a little time. I think it'll be okay. I think they'll end up being a better offensive product than they have been. But surprisingly, defense has quietly let me down a little bit. Pass rush is not there like I thought it would be. Their safety depth post-injury has taken a really big hit, and they're shaky back there, and I cannot shake the image of Bowling Green moving the ball down the field through the air on them. And, Colin, if you've got their schedule, could you throw that up? And I'm going to explain to you in very simple terms why that concerns me. They're going to go to L.A. next month and play USC. And one of the things I know about Lincoln Riley and his passing attack is it is a level up from Bowling Green, all due respect there. They're going to play Ohio State, ditto. You know, they're going to, if they were to make it to the playoff, anybody they face is going to be able to throw the ball. Now, that's the natural filtration process of being alive that late in the season. So it is, week 4. It's a developmental game. The best teams have in common that they get better and they scale throughout the season. So this is just disappointment so far. This is not me writing you off. Actually, I've written Florida State off. I have not written Penn State off yet. So look at my fingers. They're still crossed. There's still time. There's still plenty of time here. Speaking, though, of the offensive coordinator there at Penn State, Andy Kotelnicki left Kansas, and apparently Jalen Daniels' ability to throw the ball consistently did as well. I mean, they've already lost 2 games. They're a big disappointment to me. Jalen Daniels, the big question around this program was, will he be healthy? Because if he's healthy this year, then they're a contender to win the Big 12. Well, he's healthy, and they're not a contender to win the Big 12. He is just under 55% completion this year so far, and 6 picks. To give you an idea of the impact of losing that coordinator, 55% guy this year with half a dozen picks. 2 years ago, when he was the last time he was a full-year starter, 65% completion and 2 picks the whole year. So it's not the same. It is not the same. The age-old adage in this sport is don't just blindly buy into returning anything. Returning starts, returning experience and production. It's valuable. You certainly want experience over just having a bunch of question marks on your roster, but there's this blind assumption that if anyone returns in this sport, if anyone comes back, they automatically improve 10, 15, 20%. Well, that's not always the case. In fact, the road through a college football season is littered with guys that didn't play as well as they had in previous years. And this is an example. And I'm disappointed in Kansas. And I am a little bit disappointed in Oklahoma State. But Oklahoma State's got a shot to rectify all this Saturday. But I don't know, Jesse, Colin, I mean, we sat here all spring and we talked about how the offensive line was just a bunch of 35-year-old grown men, and Ollie Gordon was returning from having won all these awards last year at tailback, and they can't run the ball. He's averaging 72 yards per game. He's supposed to be the best running back in the sport. It's the most experienced offensive line I think I've ever seen. These guys all have like a wife and 3 kids and sensible mortgages, and we can't run the ball, or at least we haven't. So they play Utah Saturday. It's one of the games we're going to break down later in the show. And if you're going to get right, you might as well do it against Utah. But I am very disappointed that it's been Alan Bowman throwing the ball. That's actually been how they've been able to come back on Arkansas and gave up over 640 yards in the process defensively, so they needed every one of those points. But I've got some disappointment. I know everyone paints me as a glass half full guy. No, even I get disappointed. The good news for about 4 of these teams is you still got a ton of time to get things right and accomplish all your preseason goals. You can accomplish pretty much like 90% of the goals you have in life, you can accomplish at Academy Sports and Outdoors. That is, if you're living life the right way and you're properly motivated. Tailgating. You can accomplish like 99% of your tailgating goals at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Like if you're looking to meet your significant other at a tailgate, I would say Academy can't help you because legally they cannot promise that. But honestly, if you walk into an Academy, it's not bad selection in there. I'm just saying we had on the show last year a testimonial from 2 people who met in an academy and they ended up getting married. That's a fact, Colin. Like we ran with that. We screenshot it and we put it on the show because someone said it to us on the internet, which means it's true. There's no question about it. It's true. And it is also true that whether you're going back to school, you're getting ready for fall, you're getting ready for the sports season, you're getting ready for tailgating, Academy, they make this show free for you. They have been a partner with us pretty much since the beginning of this show here a few years back. And they will take care of all your needs. And if you can't get there in person, academy.com has your hookup. We've got a growing audience here, even as the minutes go by live on this Tuesday night. Appreciate you being tuned in. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button. I saw we had like 600 subs from last show, which just means a bunch of you checked to see if you were subbed and you found out you weren't. So if you didn't do that the other night, just go ahead and do that now. We got a big game coming up in Norman, Oklahoma Saturday night. The whole new Saturday tour. Our first ever trip to Oklahoma for a football game. Been over there storm chasing many times this year already. And I've only been to Oklahoma to storm chase. But I will be there Saturday night, and I don't even think the Storms Prediction Center has issued an advisory for Saturday. That's how tranquil the weather should be. High of 94. So tranquil and hot. Good name for an album for us later this year. But Josh Heupel's going back to Oklahoma. And this is like full-on Wyatt Earp and Tombstone sort of stuff. I know he's downplaying it this week, but behind the scenes, he wants blood. He is out for blood. And I am thinking about the times in the past that we've hyped games up and we've hyped players up and teams up this early in the season. And then you find out at the quarter pole and at the halfway point that sometimes your hype was built on false information. So that doesn't mean that's the case here. It just means we have to be wary of it. My guess on the padlock stat for this game come Sunday night when we review it is explosive plays. Because Tennessee's top 5 right now in that category and Oklahoma's in the 120s. But that does not mean that the book is written on this. This is week 4, not week 12. So we haven't fully figured out who teams are. So one of my big questions about Oklahoma right now is why is Jackson Arnold your leading rusher? It's the quarterback there. The offensive line is badly banged up. That's one reason. Wide receiver production has been fairly subpar this year, and they've been hurt there as well. So that has led to defenses stacking the box on them, and a lot of those rushing yards for Jackson Arnold are not coming via design QB run. It's running for his life, and then he happens to make something out of nothing. But no pass pro, no options out wide, scrambling, and he ends up being your leading rusher so far. That's not how we drew it up. Now, we can't do anything about the past, but is that going to continue here? Can I expect it to come together versus Tennessee? I know if you're an Oklahoma fan, you know this. If you're not, those folks have been trying to circle this game as the game where they time up health-wise their guys coming back. Some of them, like Nick Anderson at wide receiver, we think may come back this week. That may give you an explosive play threat above and beyond Deion Burks down the field. But the entire team's not going to get healthy this week, or at least I wouldn't expect it. And there's a thing that is there maybe to be had. I just don't know if Oklahoma can do it. I think Tennessee's secondary can still be had. No one's been equipped to do it so far this year. Oklahoma doesn't look so far like they've been equipped. But Tennessee has not harassed quarterbacks so far, although I think they have the capability. They got 4 sacks so far this year. So the pressure and havoc rates haven't quite been as high as I thought they'd be with Tennessee. Secondary, even if they are ripe to be picked apart, no one has come close to being able to do it so far this year. Do you get Nick Anderson back, and do you find a way to stay in manageable down and distance, and Jackson Arnold has a coming out party, and all of a sudden the offense clicks? Hey, it'd be nice. It's tough to have that happen in this moment, but that'd be nice. Now, as for Tennessee, I think Nico Iamaleava will have to win this game with his arm, which I think would make a lot of Tennessee folks say, okay, fine. And you may be right. You may be right. I think as highly of him as anyone, but no one's made him do it so far. There's a lot of firsts that we're still finding out with him. This is not a grizzled veteran third-year starter. This is not like watching Carson Beck. You know, there's not a lot of firsts that we see with Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers. We still got some firsts. We're seeing him go on the road for the first time in a true road environment, not a bowl game or a neutral site, a true road environment here. We're probably going to see a defense make him throw the ball to beat him. And I'm sure that Josh Heupel and that offensive staff have the confidence that he can. Will he? Will he? Because this is the kind of game that profiles the same way we see a few of them every year, where you watch the team you think is superior, understand they're superior, and the opposing defense uses that to their advantage because they bait you. I watch Iowa do it all the time. And I'm not necessarily, correlating one versus the other here, but there is a world where maybe Dylan Sampson does not run out of this world on Saturday night. And maybe there are a bunch of 2nd and 8s, 3rd and 7s, and Nico's got to throw it in obvious passing downs, and Brent Venables dials something up. And Oklahoma gets outgained, but they're +2 in the turnover margin, and it's deadlocked 23-all in the fourth quarter. There's a world where that happens. It's just kind of tough to picture right now because your mind has seen Oklahoma struggle and Tennessee look like a death machine. Does it continue to track that way? Don't need 200 on the ground from Dylan Sampson. You're looking at him on the screen here, the Tennessee tailback. Don't need 200 from him. Just need him to keep this offense on schedule because Oklahoma can get after the quarterback. They're 6th in the country in sacks. So the ingredients are kind of hidden, but the ingredients are there for a havoc rate game, for a quarterback harassment game, for a young guy going into a shell a little bit because he's seeing a lot of stuff for the first time from a guy who really knows how to dial it up. That's in the deck of cards. If you picture this game as a deck of cards and you're drawing one, there are a lot of Tennessee double-digit wins in that deck. But there's some really defensively ugly, turnover margin ugly, Nico in the middle of the third quarter with an ugly stat line games in that deck of cards too. So how different can Oklahoma make the first half here? That's what I wonder. Because we've seen so far, like Tennessee play NC State. And when you picture the NC State game in your mind, you think Tennessee blew them out. That was 10-3 close to the half. And then a pick six blew it open. So how does Oklahoma get the game out into that deep of the end of the pool? Because that's the game that they need to play here. The pass rush has to get Nico off the field. And then they have to convert in the early portion of the game the same way teams have done against Florida State, where all of a sudden you're looking at Mike Norvell and he's panicked over there because he hasn't had the ball. They haven't had the ball the first half. You got to find a way to have those cameras focused on Josh Heupel with like 3 minutes to go in the first half, and Tennessee hadn't had the ball. And you may not be blowing them out, but you've kept them off the field, and then you're hoping that that game script continues to tilt in your favor in the second half in what's going to be a very, very hot afternoon and evening. And you're putting a lot of guys, you're just trying to push a lot of guys for Tennessee past the limit that they've been pushed. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. Let's take a look at what our friends at FanDuel think. FanDuel's got this right now, Tennessee minus 6.5. That is my guess. I don't have this information from FanDuel, but my guess is that's going to go over 7. My guess is we'll see a 7.5, because I think a flood of public money has come and will continue to come on Tennessee. So assuming that gets to 7.5, I think Oklahoma is going to turn this into a street fight. I think Tennessee low-key is equipped to try and win a street fight, and they will. But I don't think this is going to be a blowout. And there are several coaches in the SEC who disagree with me that I talked to about this today. But I am going to trust the old gut for once. I'm going to take Tennessee to win. I'm going to take Oklahoma to cover. I think it's a one-possession game Saturday night. Should be a spectacle, though, either way. How are we even going to Norman, Colin? How are we getting there? We're getting there because our friends at Quick Trip, headquartered in Tulsa, Oklahoma, no less, are fueling our trip. We look forward to every week because we get to choose the game we go to every week. Yeah, that's the job that we have around here. They pay us to do that. So that's a dream job scenario, and we've never been to an Oklahoma game, so we're going there proudly fueled by Quick Trip. Now, I told you guys when we brought Quick Trip on board that I brought them on board with the caveat that you guys got to give away like thousands of dollars in free gas to the audience. And they agreed, and we've been doing it ever since. Like an hour ago, for example, Dalton hit us up, and this is all you have to do. I can't give free gas to everyone, but throughout the day, I'm just looking at you guys tagging me because every one of you that goes to a Quick Trip is taking pictures of yourself and you post it on the socials. So, Colin, do you have that tweet from Dalton? Yeah, here it is. He's in the parking lot of a Quick Trip holding up a pouch of Big League Chew. Ground ball grape is the best Big League Chew flavor, by the way. And he said, I'm making a stop at Quick Trip on this move across the country, only place to get all the essentials. That's all it took. Dalton got a free tank of gas out of this. So Quick Trip has followed through on their end of the deal. You guys keep following through on your end, and we'll keep handing out the free tanks of gas left and right. It's pretty much the perfect situation for us as a Pate State people around here. We partner with a big company, and they give us a bunch of free stuff, and I pass it on to you. All right, let's continue. We have got another big game. Big game in the big house Saturday. USC at Michigan. How did you think this game was going to shape up? How did you think this game was going to feel in August? How does it feel now? And how different is it? This is the Saturday 3:30 Eastern game on CBS, by the way. This is a classic springboard situation versus wounded animal situation. I know the win against LSU was really big for USC. A win on the road at Michigan. Even though we don't think Michigan is as good a team as LSU, this would be a conference win on the road in Lincoln Riley's first year in the Big Ten. This would be a springboard moment. And if they go up there and they really plant their flag, figuratively, who knows, maybe literally, it would be a springboard moment. Because you'd start really quickly realizing USC is a prime player in the Big Ten championship race. But Michigan is in the classic wounded animal mode, a term coined by our buddy J.C. Sherbert from long ago. And wounded animal mode is not to be taken lightly in college football. Wounded animal mode means desperate times, calling for desperate measures, and they have named Alex Orji the starting quarterback at Michigan for this game. And he's the guy we thought would win the job. They thought would win the job in spring. He didn't do it. Over summer workouts, still no. Well, he'll do it in fall camp. Well, no, he didn't. And Michigan was really bad out of the gate as a result. There's a reason he didn't win the job. He wasn't good enough. And now they've switched to him. And weirdly, I think it aligns Michigan's offense. It doesn't make them a prolific offense. I didn't say that. In fact, their passing is going to become even worse than it already has been. But it wasn't going to be good regardless. Alex Orji being inserted does one thing for them, and it aligns their offense. There is no more guessing what they are. They are a dual threat quarterback led, and there really isn't a dual threat. He's just a running back who can throw the ball a little bit. But that's what Michigan's offense is going to have to be. It's going to have to be a very complementary approach. Special teams and defense are going to have to carry a disproportionate amount of the weight. There's no more trying to be anything other than that. So it at least aligns their offense. That's one good thing we have going for us. USC's run defense. This is the test. Because of that, this is the test. Last year they were 119th. Terrible. This year they're 33rd so far. The LSU test in week 1, I don't think was as firm a test as this one will be. And then Utah State last week, they trailed early so quickly they didn't even bother trying to run the ball. Michigan will run the ball, and if you get up on them, they will still try and run the ball. So this will be one of the best tests that run defense has all year. Here's something that we're looking at and something that I think could matter. USC's entire 2D defensive line, there are 2 guys north of 300 pounds. So does it become that kind of game? Does it become the kind of game where that stat matters? I am on the record as saying this personnel grouping has already vastly overachieved to me relative to what I thought was in that room. This will be a really good test for them. Here's what USC needs to do. It's as simple and as complex as this. All they have to do is do what Texas did. All they have to do is grab an early lead. Michigan will not be prepared to play from behind at any point this year. They were leading in 95% of the snaps last season when they won a title. Texas said, yeah, whatever, bye, and they pulled away from them. You get up 10-0, 14-0 early, and it is very deflating because this is a very fragile fan base right now. They're going to be all in. This is a very tough ticket to get, and it'll be just like when we went to the Florida-Miami game in week 1. Florida fans were totally all in. They're fine, but there were doubts in the back of their mind, and when Miami took an early lead, it was total deflation, and there's no home field advantage anymore. And I was on the sideline for the Texas-Michigan game. And it was total deflation. And by halftime, there was no home field advantage anymore. If USC can do that, and I love Miller Moss. Now, he has the capability of doing it. He's facing Michigan on the road, though, in a very desperate situation. And unlike Quinn Ewers, Miller Moss does not have those moments under his belt yet. So can they do that? Can they replicate that? Some early throws, I think, can be the difference in this thing. You will see a couple of early throws, second, third down, and you will see either a tip ball incomplete or you'll see one of those several USC wide receivers capable of doing such things make a really good grab. It moves the chains, and USC goes down and scores, and you'll find yourself thinking they're off to the races. Or you'll find yourself thinking, uh-oh, Michigan got them off the field. It's a ball game here, because if they can grind out a 12 or 13-play drive, chew up a bunch of clock, same thing can happen that Michigan used to do. They get you in their game script, and all of a sudden you're saying, man, we don't have the ball. Why don't we have the ball? USC can do what Texas did because they have the same kind of wide receiver depth that Texas had. Will Johnson's a great player. Michigan is not elite in their secondary behind Will Johnson. And so Lincoln Riley can dial it up just like Sark can. The concerns that I have either way are actually, my biggest concern for Michigan is USC's probably equipped to do some of the stuff Texas did. The difference is Texas, they were the bigger, stronger, faster, more physical team. I'm not sure USC's bigger and more physical than Michigan. The score could look the same. I don't think they achieve it in the exact same way as Texas did. But Michigan's physical edge, this is my biggest concern about USC. Their physical edge just may be more glaring. Because I think a lot of people's concerns have been put to rest after that LSU game. And guys, I'm telling you, I just watched South Carolina get after that LSU offensive line. And I just watched South Carolina run for 240 plus on that LSU defensive line. So it was a great win for USC. I am not banking that they're just established, both lines of scrimmage, off of the LSU game, is all I'm saying. This will be the bankable game. This will be the one. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. FanDuel's got USC minus 5.5 right now. We think it's a little north of that. The model thinks USC minus 7. Is it really over? Here's where my mind is on this game. Is it really over? Because if USC goes in there and wins and covers here, that's kind of your season for Michigan. They're still going to play all the games, but your preseason goals are probably out the window if you lose this game. And then conversely, I'm thinking, man, I think USC is the story of college football so far this year. I do think that, by the way. I mean, it's a great turnaround defensively already. Can it really be this good? And then I think about the story and the lessons that college football teaches me every year around this time, around week 3 and week 4. I think somehow Michigan's going to find a way to win this game outright. I know that doesn't compute right now. This is college football. This is the way it works. A team like Michigan, with the pride of that program, does not get double-digit losses hung on them 2 times in September at home. At least historically, that is not the way it works. I respect wounded animal mode. I respect what Lincoln Riley's doing as well. I think this is Michigan's spot. I disagree with the model. I think it's Michigan's spot. And I really don't even want you to ask me how. I just think they're going to find a way to get it done. And I picked USC to beat LSU in week 1. Like, we nailed that. Remember that, Jesse and Colin. When they come at us in the live chat, we nailed that in week 1. And hey, credit us for picking USC to beat Utah State as well. We were brave. We were brave little toasters on that front. By the way, I don't think I talked to you guys about this. Do you know Brian Kelly had the audacity to sit in his post-game press conference after the South Carolina game this past week, favored by a touchdown plus, and sat there and told the media no one picked us to win this game? Kirby Smart's players have started an epidemic. When they won the title and then yelled in a camera that someone picked them to go 7-5, it's like all bets were off. You can just claim anyone said anything at any time. So we're trying to be responsible around here. I have good news. Director Colin has photographic evidence that our store is open. PateStateMaterial.com is open. We got a tour t-shirt. Look at the whole new Saturday tour. Look at the little tornado, because I love storm chasing. And it's made up of the different conference logos, but not licensed logos because we get sued. Really love that design there. And also, Chuggy merch is in high demand. When you get a new mascot, the first thing you do is you slap him on a t-shirt. And we got the Pate State Little Freight's children's line as well. And some of the adults watching the show could probably fit in it. So there's no judgment here. We will take all purchases, and that money goes right back into this show. So we appreciate it. It's a roundabout way of you being clothed in a classy manner and us investing into the show. Thank you, guys. PateStateMaterial.com, open for business. And we only shut down once. You guys only shut the website down once so far. All righty. JP poll time. JP poll version 4. The week 4 poll here. It's ratings. It's not rankings. We are going to have some movement that makes no sense to you if you believe in a merit-based up or down, whether you won or lost. This is not an AP. This is not looking to mirror the college football playoff committee. This is not how I think the committees should rate their teams. This is how, in a pure neutral field favorability model, the model would rank these teams on a neutral field based on the number it would put on the game. So, we do have a change at the top. Ironically, it's the same as the AP. Texas is our new number 1 team, and we would favor them by 2.5 points against Georgia if they played today. So there was big movement here both ways. More on that because those two teams are going to play each other in a few weeks. Ohio State is still 3, Bama is still 4. Oregon has reemerged in the top 5. I tried to explain the profile of Oregon. We had them all the way down at 9, but I tried to explain it was like pulling a rubber band, because whenever Oregon just starts to validate what the preseason profile was on them, it'll be like a rubber band snap. They'll be right back up there. They are. There is a 7-point gap between Texas and Oregon right now. If we put Texas-Oregon neutral field, the model says 7. I'll have to hit up FanDuel about what they think about it. But that's not a massive gap. We normally have a much bigger gap between 1 and 5 than that. Number 6 is Tennessee. They hung 490 points on Kent State and fell a spot. Shame on them. Ole Miss at 7. Miami is at 8. And it says they dropped 2 spots. But Miami actually rose in terms of their rating. It's just that a couple of teams vaulted above them because they rose more. Penn State is at 9. USC is at 10. Most of these are unchanged. Now, 11 through 15, I do want to make a little point about. So Clemson is at 11. Clemson is now at, and in fact, a little bit above our preseason rating. They are 0.2 points above where we had them coming into week 1. So that loss to Georgia, that body bagging at the hands of Georgia, is baked into that, and we still think the number on Clemson is right. Missouri's at 12. You notice this time last week, we had a bunch of people chirping at us about Missouri. We have underrated Missouri. And then I asked, well, what should they be rated? And some guy came at me and said, oh, I would pick, who was it? I'd pick Oregon. I'd pick Penn State. There were like 3 or 4 teams he listed. There's no way you'd favor them over Missouri. So I went to FanDuel, and I said, hey, the entire purpose of this thing is favorability neutral field. Could you give me what the lines would be? And 4 out of 4, they would have been favored over Missouri. I didn't hear anything from those folks this week. Probably because they trailed Boston College early. Probably because they realized their secondary is a little bit of a liability right now. And having them at number 12 is plenty high enough because that's where we have them. So we were probably right on Missouri. And then we'll see how they perform down the stretch. Notre Dame at 13. I think they're too high. Model disagrees. Kansas State at 14. LSU at 15. LSU dropped 1 point after winning on the road at South Carolina. 16 through 20. I am very proud of the model when it comes to Louisville because we have remained virtually unchanged on Louisville, and everyone else I don't think even had them rated, and we've been pretty consistent. We have not changed. They have not even adjusted a full point. We already had them rated really high. They're at 16. Utah's at 17. They have Cam Rising back this week. A&M 18. UCF is now the number 3 team in the Big 12 at number 19. Big win against TCU this past week. Oklahoma is at number 20. Oklahoma is down a little more than a field goal off of their preseason power rating. Number 21. Let's all clap together. Iowa State, America's team. The Iowa State is to college football in 2024 what the Dallas Cowboys are to the NFL, what the Braves were in the 90s to Major League Baseball. And you're welcome. You're welcome for being blessed with Iowa State football. They're 21. Iowa is 22. Nebraska, 23. Michigan is down 5 more spots to 24. They've bottomed out. I think that's as low as Michigan will go this year. Tennessee, or TCU rather, is number 25. If Tennessee was 25, we would have a conversation. So, I'm looking at the Big 12, and I'm looking at the ACC. And not that this will be what the final measuring stick is, but there's a healthy amount of Big 12 representation here, which just means I think they've got a lot of pretty competitive teams. And, teams like Kansas have already fallen out. They're not even part of this. And I'm just wondering, as so many people keep putting out these playoff brackets and projections and whatnot, and I keep seeing one Big 12 team in there, is that the way it's automatically got to go down? Do we automatically have to adhere to what we thought about the Big 12 in the preseason? Can we not allow some wiggle room in the accordion? Can we expand it and contract it based on, what our eyeballs are seeing? Can we do that? They're watching us in Lacey, Washington, Bossier City, Louisiana, Charleston, West Virginia. As always, we appreciate it. Now, this next segment, I'm going to need to take a chug of water for, actually. Colin, this time last year, I'd already lost my voice, and it's still with us, thankfully, but the fall sneezing has not started for allergy season yet either. Okay, so Sunday night, I just told the truth, and that was officiating was horrific in college football Saturday. And I gave a number of examples. I had Director Colin tee up a number of video instances so we could have moving pictures that were the proof. And I'm going to take you back, because if you missed the Sunday show, you kind of missed the context here. I'm going to play you a clip of what I said, and oh my goodness, the flood of reaction that has come confidentially from officials after this is amazing. Let's roll it, Colin. College football is the greatest sport on the face of the earth. I love it. I will fight for it. It is a multi-billion-dollar sport with the most nickel and dime officiating arm that you could ever imagine. We are so far behind on accountability and standard of officiating. I'm not saying these are bad people. In fact, I don't even think they're doing the wrong thing. I think they've been put in a no-win position as well. Because I will guarantee you, after what happened with Tua the other night, I will guarantee you there were Friday conference calls with those league offices, and those league offices talked to their officiating crews, and they just flat out told them, guys, there are eyes on us that aren't normally on us. We have got to enforce stuff. We've got to make it abundantly clear we're protecting the players. Well, you're not. You're just screwing the players, because there were games decided. There were outcomes decided on some of these calls yesterday. And imagine being these coaches. You only get 12 of these games. I got about as strong a bunch of feedback on that segment as we've gotten in a while. And normally, we're talking about teams and it's fan reaction. But when I talked about that the other night, I got lit up in a really good way in DMs and whatnot, and people who I know mutually giving my number to officials, and they reached out and they just wanted to talk because they agreed with a lot of what we said. They just wanted to make sure it was understood what's going on behind the scenes, and I appreciate it. Anytime we can make that happen on this show, I appreciate it, because This microphone's pretty big. So, I mean, if you want things to get out there in the proper way, that's how you do it. Don't just let folks trash you, especially if folks trashing you don't know what they're talking about. So let me address one thing, because I think it's completely misguided. A lot of people, because of the proliferation of sports betting in American sporting society these days, look at any bad call and they automatically think gambling related. I'm not saying it's never happened before. I'm not saying it's a total non-issue. I'm saying it is very, very misguided, thinking that that's the crux of the issue here. Not a whiff of it. Didn't get a whiff of it. And I'm telling you quite the opposite. The Vegas mechanism helps in these instances way more than it hurts. It helps because it's monitored. You've never been more likely to have that sort of illicit activity rooted out than you are now, because it is to the detriment of the gambling complex to have any kind of malfunction in the integrity of the game. They don't want the games compromised, guys. They want the games operating as they're supposed to be. And so, no, on that front, just point blank, that's not what's happening here. I'll tell you what is happening here, though. I was talking to an official from a major conference about 3 minutes before we came on the show tonight. I heard from over a dozen of them, and there are some emails I haven't opened yet, so I will get to you. I think it's a very complex issue, but it's a very simple issue. And it's not going to shock you to find out what's happening in college football officiating. So the first thing you need to know is these dudes on field actually, I think, do a really good job. Replay officials, not so much. But the guys on the field are doing really good jobs if you understand what their job is, and therein lies the issue. A lot of them don't understand what the job is. A lot of them are enforcing things they've been told to enforce, and what they've been told to enforce varies week to week. It varies conference to conference. It's not as simple as bad call, ref sucks. Why are they there? Why have they been told to flag what they flag? You know, first thing out of two issues that I had laid out to me was, and this will not shock you, there's no consistency in how officiating happens in college football. You've got something called the Collegiate Commissioner Association Mechanics Manual. Okay, in a normal world, you know, if you work at McDonald's, there's one way to make a Big Mac. In Seattle and Miami and LA and New York and Topeka, there's one way to make a Big Mac. That's called a standardized approach. And it makes sense, right? College football hadn't figured that out yet. And so there's a way to do things in the Big 12, and there's a way to do things in the SEC, and you got folks who are the head of officiating in one place that think this should be emphasized and that should be emphasized, and you got your CCA manual there of mechanics, which officials look at and say, why isn't this the universal standard? It can't be that simple. It just can't be that simple. This reared its ugly head no less than last weekend, but it was spoken about a couple of weeks ago. I want to take you back to post-game Stillwater, Oklahoma. Oklahoma State has just come from behind, and they've beaten Arkansas, and Mike Gundy rang the bell on this. Roll it, Colin.
When we go on two and we clap and then clap again, well, we motioned a tight end to run the ball over here. They jumped, and the explanation to me is you can't do that. But we've done it before. So there's the issue you have with officiating crews. That's the SEC crew. We did it. We've done it before. We did it all preseason in scrimmages with Big 12 crews, and didn't get it called. So Steve Shaw is the head of the officiating. He needs to fix it. He needs to get them all in one room, and everybody has the same rule.
Now, you might listen to that. If you're not a college football fan, if your boyfriend's watching the show, your husband's watching the show, and you're just in the background, like wandering through the living room, you say, how can that be a problem? It sounds so simple. And now you start to understand college football. A multi-billion-dollar sport that still has appendages of itself that are nickel and dime, not worth the paper it's drawn on. It makes no sense. It's not supposed to make sense. It is such a simple concept. We've got teams from coast to coast. We've got conferences from coast to coast, but those stripes look the same on every field. Why don't we have a universal standard of officiating? Why don't we go by this mechanics manual? Because then you would have some people in power that don't have as much power as they have. And then you, of course, have the other issue that is age old, tale as old as time. You probably deal with it every day, especially if you work in the corporate world, and that is politics coming into play when it comes to who advances in the space. I don't care where you work. If you work in the corporate world long enough, you have experienced this. You have watched someone get a promotion, and a bunch of you stood in the break room and said, how in the world did that just happen? Don't think it's any different in officiating. And don't think for a second that you may not turn on a game this Saturday and look at someone on that field that is very ill qualified and prepared to be in that spot. And it gets even worse when you start to dive in or you open the hood on what it takes to kind of become qualified to do this sort of thing. Like, yeah, you got to put in your time. You got to pay tens of thousands of dollars to go to the camps and the clinics. But what's crazy is even when you go to the clinics, some of the clinicians are there for political reasons, far less than just pure merit-based reasons, which means some folks have no clue what they're talking about, and they call themselves teaching you how to be an official, and everyone just kind of sits there and snickers because everyone knows why this person is here, because she knows him or he knows her. And by and large, it's just a waste of time. And then at the clinics, you're having different things stressed based on who's running the clinic, and there's no universal standard for anything. So the moral of the story is, same conclusion here. College football officiating is not good enough. It's not good enough for a sport that a lot of us love. It's very important. You can't speak out about it if you're a head coach. I just saw Narduzzi get fined $5,000 for committing the crime of telling the truth about officiating in their game against West Virginia last week. You get no answers. This is the most maddening part to someone like me or someone like you, because we're not even coaches. We just sit at home and watch. And the product is compromised, and you get no answer. You get bad calls made, and no one's ever going to have to answer to you. I was listening to Shane Beamer earlier today. He said, we sent a bunch of plays in to get reviewed. We heard back from him. He can't comment on it because he's going to get fined. So, what's the procedure? In this world, we have a way we do things. We have a standard that we have to operate to, and if we don't operate to it, then we get taken off the air. This is CBS. They're not going to put their mic in front of me if we're not operating at a certain standard. In this world, you fail to meet the standard, and you're right back on the field the next week, and the week after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. And so some of these officials aren't good enough to be in the position they're in. Many more of them are, and they're being hamstrung and handcuffed by the folks behind the scenes whose faces you'll never see and whose names you never know. But I'm telling you, what Mike Gundy just did, I don't care if he got fined for it. And what Pat Narduzzi just did, I don't care if he got fined for it. You're going to have to do. Head coaches are the ones with the microphone. They're the ones with the voice, and they're going to have to bite the bullet. And if Kirby Smart gets screwed, or Kalen DeBoer gets screwed, or Sark gets screwed, I don't care if they fine you $5,000. That is a rounding error in your paycheck. And for the greater good of cleaning up officiating in this sport, it may be that you got to embarrass these people. Most everyone responds to that. And if people don't know who the head of officiating is in the ACC or the SEC or the Big 12, maybe it's time for them to know. Maybe it's time for the curtain to be peeled back on what should be publicly available information, and that is how you decide who officiates college football games that tens of millions of dollars are being bet on and a lot of emotion is being poured into from a fan base's perspective. Maybe it's time for a little more light to be shed on that process. This is our effort to do it. Moving along, I got a couple of games still to get to. I want you to know something. Back in the day when we first came here, it was 2020, and we started the show. And Colin, you remember we would have FedEx drivers and UPS drivers, delivery truck drivers, and long-haul truck drivers that would disproportionately hit us up and say, thank you for the show, man. You have no clue what it does to get us through our day. And I always loved it. To this day, we get inundated with delivery truck drivers and service industry people who may be driving a truck, or they may be working a night shift at a restaurant and they just got the earbud in listening. To know that the show is being used in that manner, always love it. Drew hit us up today. I just had Colin pick this one out, but I could screenshot these every day. He said, I'm a UPS delivery truck driver. Anytime I get people wanting to talk sports with me on my route, I always recommend your show. I always love it when they talk to me about your show. hat tip Drew and hat tip the hundreds of you that we hear from per week. I appreciate you guys more than you know. Another big game to talk about here. There's a game happening at Oklahoma State Saturday that is going to have huge implications on the conference championship race out there. Utah goes to Oklahoma State. It is a Saturday game. It is a 4 o'clock Eastern time kick, 3 o'clock local kick on Fox. I am irate that this game is not an 11 a.m. kickoff. I had eyes on this weeks ago. I knew we were going to go to Tennessee, Oklahoma. I knew that was a primetime game. If this was earlier, I would go to both games. And they took it from us. They robbed us. But that's okay. I'm going to say like an 80% chance the winner of this game goes to the Big 12 title game. So there's a lot on the line here. Cam Rising is – Jesse, you playing? Jesse is playing. Cam Rising is back this week. So let me explain something about experience in this game to you. You have never experienced experience like you will experience Saturday in this game. Cam Rising is starting at quarterback for Utah. Alan Bowman is starting at quarterback for Oklahoma State. They combine to have lived 49 years on this earth. The Bears and the Colts play Sunday. The combined age of the starting quarterbacks there is 44. That courtesy of college sports only. Maybe the stat of the week. Maybe the pregame padlock stat of the week. There is half a century of life experience on the field at quarterback here. Oklahoma State has faced one Power 4 team. That was Arkansas. And they gave up about 650 yards to them. And 418 of those were through the air. So I think Cam Rising can have himself a little bit of an afternoon here. He's got the best set of weapons that he's had around him in quite a while, tight end and receiver. But what I want to know is on the other side, like we talked about earlier in the show, where's the run game for Oklahoma State? They're All-American at running back. They got the most experienced offensive line in the country. It's got to click, and it has not been close. They're 108th in yards per attempt rushing the ball this year. Alan Bowman, though, quarterback, has bailed him out. He's 7th in FBS in passing yards per game, which is just not a stat that I expected. He's cut down on the turnovers. You can't love that recipe here. Okay, so the running game has got to be found, and preferably this Saturday. It's impossible to know a couple of things in this game that I think will end up deciding it. Number one is, at what point this year does Oklahoma State find that ground game? When does it click? Number two, Utah's a much different team on the road. Just last several years. Good, solid program, but much different. Like, in some ways, a disproportionately different team on the road than at home. And that matters here. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. The FanDuel number right now is Utah minus 1.5 on the road. We've got Oklahoma State minus 1. So it's basically a coin toss game. We're on the other side of it. But I think there's a staff edge for Utah here that I use to kind of negate the home field edge. I think OC and DC, there's an edge for Utah relative to Oklahoma State. I think Utah's going to find a way to win the game and obviously cover 1.5. Not a ton of confidence on that game. Should be very fun to watch, and I'll be just down the road. I don't know where I'll be watching that game, but I'll be just down the road watching it somewhere. And by the way, the odds to win the Big 12, Utah currently number 1, Oklahoma State number 4. And those odds could invert very quickly. And like I said, Iowa State, shark fin right offshore. Iowa State number 5. Iowa State plays, Jesse, check it. I don't think they do. Iowa State plays Utah late in the year. I don't know if they play Oklahoma State. There are a lot of big-time games down the stretch in the Big 12. Big 12 schedule makers have been taking a lot of heat. They may kind of know what they're doing. Speaking of America's College Football Conference, we are, of course, powered in the odds by FanDuel. And FanDuel also powers the Ramen Noodle Express. Not something they're proud of at the moment, given how badly it's performed. But that's okay, because we're just going to switch tracks this week and we'll be fine. We will be fine. We've never not made money using the model over the long haul, over the course of an entire season. There have been a couple of week stretches where it's been horrific, though, and we're in one right now. Excuse me, we're out of it. So Ramen Noodle Express time, we're going to add. We've got Brigham Young plus 7.5 already against Kansas State. I am adding another game with Big 12 implications. It's Baylor. Yeah, we're going to bet money on Baylor plus 1.5 at Colorado. Wrong team's favored. We think Baylor's going to go into Boulder and win outright. and we will fill the rest of those train cars up throughout the week, and Friday night lines will emanate from Norman, Oklahoma Friday night at Late Kick Josh on Instagram. Yep, still got the grandfathered in title there. One more game, I gotta touch on this, and it happens before the rest of them. Illinois goes to Nebraska Friday night. In fact, halftime of this game is probably when I'll do Friday night lines, because that worked very well last Friday night. This is a top 25 matchup. Do you realize that? At least in the AP, it's a top 25 matchup. I've got a big-time paper popper of a stat here. Both of these teams are 3-0. This is Nebraska's first 3-0 start since 2016. It is Illinois' first 3-0 start since 2011. So, who figures out how to deal with prosperity here? This is an interesting situation when we talk about tests, because the test for Nebraska was thought to be the Colorado game. Everyone was building up for the Colorado game. This is the test for Nebraska, not the Colorado game. This is the test. Illinois' defense is 13th in points per game allowed, 33rd in yards per game allowed. They've been pretty stiff against opposing offenses. Colorado, not so much. And Dylan Raiola, kind of a familiar theme with a lot of the young quarterbacks facing first-time situations. He hasn't had his bad week yet. He's about a 74% completion guy, only thrown one pick. No one's put him in a blender yet. No one's made his head spin yet. But he's a true freshman starter in major college football. Someone's going to figure out how to do it. You got a little bit of a book on him now. Someone's going to figure that out. But the Nebraska running back room has quietly been really legit. So it's not a one-man show there. Don't let Nebraska play clean. That's the whole key for Illinois. They're coming in here, and they're 117th in yards per game last year. They are 50th right now. And so that's all we needed. Nebraska, that's all we needed. They were terrible last year. We didn't need them to be top 10. They're good enough defensively. What we just asked for is be average. That's what they've been so far this year. Nebraska last year, turnover ratio, almost the worst in the country. This year, 22nd. It's early, but we've gotten that. So they've been able to play clean. Don't let them play clean. Defense has allowed 20 points total this year. You can't be allowing them to play clean. They're not going to give up a lot. And this game last year was crazy. I think Nebraska won like 20-7 or something like that. Illinois didn't try to run the ball, or they weren't effective running the ball. 47-19 pass to run ratio. A few truths in an uncertain world, few guarantees at least. I guarantee you that doesn't look the same this game. Let's take a look at what the model thinks, Colin. The FanDuel number is Nebraska minus 8.5. The model thinks that's a little too generous. We've got Nebraska minus 7. Classic two-way go here. I think Nebraska wins. It's a very tight game. That over-under is 43, so it's a game played in the upper teens, low 20s. I think Nebraska wins. I think Illinois finds a way to cover. No money for us on that one right now. Nice, tight Tuesday night, hour-long show. Whomst amongst us would have thunk it. Thank you guys so much, man. We're doing really, really, really good numbers, and the interaction we have when we go out on the road is amazing. So let's just keep doing what we're doing and recruit 5 of your friends right now to come and sub to the channel and the podcast feed as well. So for Director Colin, for Producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. We'll be back same time Thursday night. Until then, take care and God bless.